Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, we're going to talk about how to generate fat stacks of cash flow with velocity banking. So just another velocity banking review. Now, I know there are a lot of you out there who want to be landlords, right? Because you think it's so easy. You just borrow all the money in the world. Doesn't TikTok and YouTube give you that impression? And even Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, gives you that impression that you can just borrow all the money in the world and then somehow you'll cash flow, right? But I don't know if you know the average statistics for rental property. So if you go to biggerpockets.com, there's a blog entry on the website, biggest real estate investing website on the internet, about what is good cash flow. And notice how good is in quotes. So basically, they're saying good cash flow is about $100 to $200 a month. Now, I don't know about you, okay, but in order for me to retire on rental real estate doing it the average landlord way, I'd have to have like 20 plus rental houses. And to imagine to that I would have to manage 20 plus tenants in order to retire, it doesn't seem so passive, does it? In fact, this is why tired landlords, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term, are a good source of real estate deals. So if you just do a Google search on tired landlords, there's lots of resources about how to reach out to these people because a good deal for them is about $100, $200 a month, right? And they're not generating fat stacks of cash flow. They're just generating thin stacks of, I don't know what would be the opposite, but I'll just say thin stacks of cash flow, itty bitty cash flow. But we need to generate fat stacks, right? And we're going to do that with the help of velocity banking. So what is velocity banking? Let's get to it, do another review. So all velocity banking is a debt payoff strategy using a line of credit as your main operating account. Okay? Now, here we have a situation where someone makes really good money, probably doesn't even need the rental real estate, right? But we spend more than we make. You notice how the income is $9,000 and then the expenses is $9,644 and we're now in negative savings territory. You see that? And so we have all of our expenses written down. And what's really important is we have to list every single debt that we have, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 credit cards. And for whatever reason, credit cards is the debt that people fear the most, but velocity banking is relatively easy to get rid of. And then we have this mortgage right here, right? And so what we're going to do is when we're in a tough personal situation, we got to learn how to increase our cash flow. And this is just my opinion. I don't think anybody should get rental properties unless you feel comfortable with the tenant not paying rent. And the only way that we can feel comfortable with the tenant not paying rent is if we're definitely not in negative savings, right? Definitely not. Okay, so we're gonna do something called velocity banking, and we're gonna have something access to something called a line of credit. So we did the budget, right? So we did the budget. Now we need access to a line of credit. You might be asking, what's a line of credit? All it is a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay it back, and then use it over and over again. So a credit card is a line of credit, right? A credit card, literally, literally, not figuratively, literally is a line of credit, but with some restrictions compared to a personal or home equity line of credit. Now, what does it look like in real life? Because people are curious about what a home equity credit line of credit looks like in real life. So if I go in here, basically you go to the bank's website, right? This is the credit limit up to how much you can borrow, and then this is just kind of how much is available for you to use. And all you do is click the bank's website, you click the button, and then you have cash deposit in your account, and you say how much do you want, like $5, $10, 5,000, right? You just click invest. Now, if you're in Texas, my understanding is if you have access to this, you have to have a $4,000 minimum withdrawal. Whereas with my line of credit, home equity line of credit, I can just take out $1, right? It's so flexible, and I can put money back in whenever I want. But this is basically how a home equity line of credit looks like in real life when you go to the bank's website, or at least one of the banks, right? Oopsie, wrong spreadsheet. Okay, so now let's assume we have access to a home equity line of credit and we have access to a huge home equity line of credit, $200,000. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Who's gonna, who has a $200,000 home equity line of credit laying around? And the answer is that if they're in this situation and they have a line of credit laying around, they apply for a line of credit, they're going to get rejected because banks don't lend money to people who need it. That's really important for us to understand, right? You have to understand that. See, too many people are like, well, I'm going to try to get it when I'm struggling. And it's like, no, 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 no. You got to get it before you ever need it because banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? Just don't try to defeat the system. Try to understand it, right? Don't try to go against it unless like the system is totally unethical. And you could probably make a good argument that the banking system itself is incredibly unethical, but that's a discussion for another time. Okay, so now let's understand. Just because we have a line of credit does not mean that that is velocity banking. Some people get that confused too. Because what if, I'm in negative $644 of savings this month, yet, I thought I was just going to be, a little bit that much into the negative, meaning like it's not going to be more than $644. But what if tomorrow I had an emergency, right? So maybe I had a $3,000 car emergency and I used my line of credit to pay for it. Well, what's the problem here when we do it the average American way? Okay, what's the problem? The problem is that we're probably going to have at least a negative $50 payment, so minus 50, and now we're in more than we've what do you call it? How's the best way to explain it? We've dove deeper into negative savings territory, right? So we were in negative 650 savings territory, and then because we had a car emergency and doing things the average American way, we're in deeper into negative savings territory. Okay, so we don't want to do that. All right, we don't want to just use a line of credit the average American way. The thing that we have to do is use our home equity line of credit as our main operating account, right? So what we're going to do is just copy the income because we're not assuming we make more income. So people, when they see this and they see the negative savings, they're like, you got to make more income and you spent too much on debt, right? And it is true, you did spend too much on debt. But let's go ahead and say, hey, we're okay with not making more income because we know how to optimize and manage our debt and cash flow. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just copy these expenses and then kind of just do a little bit of re-engineering, right? And we're going to copy the formula for expenses here. But here's the cool thing, right? Even though we're at negative, let's just go to zero savings and see if we can create a positive cash flow, right? Because velocity banking is all about that cash flow with zero savings. It's one of the most important tenets, okay? And so once you've made your line of credit as your main operating account, this is step 2 right here, now we're going to go ahead and do the actual velocity strategy, which is the paycheck into the line of credit, which does two things. It satisfies the minimum monthly payment of that line of credit and minimizes the interest because it's based on the average daily balance. And then we take the expenses out of that line of credit. And so after every single month, it's going to go down by the cash flow. And you might say, wait a minute, this cash flow is negative $644. And that is true. It is negative $644. Okay, but we haven't done the final step of making our line of credit as our main operating account. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so let's go ahead and move some of these debts, especially these credit cards, into that line of credit, and that's $167,000 of credit card debt. Okay, $167,000, 000, right? And so now our line of credit is going to be our new savings account, line of credit, new savings account. But what happened just by simply transferring this credit card debt? So again, we haven't eliminated or paid back the credit card, we just transferred it. Well, just by doing a simple transfer, these all go to zero. 0 on the 10 credit cards, right? And then now we went from negative $644 of cash flow. And even on our personal side, we haven't even gone into a rental property to make our pitiful $100, $200 of cash flow a month, quote, good cash flow. We're cash flowing 4,700. How do we go from negative 644 to 4,700 without making more money? I mean, just is this a scam? I don't know. Am I pulling magic out of my ASS? I hope not. So again, let's go ahead and now do this. So we're going to calculate the next month, which is the uh, previous month plus 1, right? So very simple math that you all can do. And then we're going to calculate the next month balance, which is the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest minus whatever our cash flow is. Okay, cash flow is 4,701.35. Let's go ahead and type that in, 4,701.35. And then the interest is going to be based on the average daily balance, right? So you had this average function right here. We take that, we multiply it by the interest rate, and then we divide by 12. So the interest rate on this home equity line of credit is 10%. I'm getting a new home equity line of credit. I'm in the process of it. I haven't gotten it fully approved, but the mortgage officer was like, hey, it's going to be about 8.5%. And let's see if we can get there, because right now I'm at 10. But even though we're at 10, I'm at 10, I'm not really that worried, right? So once we have the three formulas, we can just estimate what's the debt payoff, and we just copy and paste these formulas, copy and paste, right? You see how it's shrinking and shrinking, and instead of going and going, it's kind of like the opposite of the Energizer Bunny, if you remember what I'm talking about, but with debt, right? So in 43 months, we paid off $167,000 of debt. And this is a huge milestone, because most people, you ask them, hey, you're in negative $644 of cash flow. What do you do? They're like, I don't know, make more money. Drive Uber, drive Lyft, Grubhub, blah, 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 right? So 43 months, 167K of debt. And look how easy that was, 10 credit cards, right? And now let's go ahead and figure this out, right? We got to figure out what's the mortgage balance. Now, actually, let's do this. Let's figure out what the balance is at 43 months. And if you don't know, there are actually functions in Excel to help you calculate the balance if you know the interest rate, the original loan amount, and what else do we need? Oh, the number of years to loan, which is 30 years for a mortgage. So we have this loan calculator right here. Let me just go ahead and delete these entries because from previous, so it's $300,000. And what's the interest rate here? 3%. We got a cheap interest rate at, so 1264.81. Did I do this right? Yeah, I got this right. Excellent. So now after, oh wait, no, that's, oh, this one is 6%. My bad. Okay, so I gotta hide these tabs. I have so many of these tabs. Okay, but this is the one we're doing right now, 1264.81. No. Oh, I'm getting confused. Okay, here we are. Here we are. 1798.65, right? So this is right. And then what month are we at? We're at 43 months. 43. So we type in 43 right here. And then our current balance is 285,000, right? So 285,000. Let me just go ahead and copy that right here. So actually, let me just do this first. So we go back here, because if I copy a formula, it's gonna be a little bit wonky. And let's go ahead and copy this. I'll just say 285K right here. 285K, and it took us about 43 months divided by 12 to get to, so about 3.5 years to shave off about 15K, which is kind of a lot. So we probably paid a lot in interest during that time. So now what do we do now? So here's the thing. We're probably at a point where, we may want to just keep the 6% mortgage and invest in a rental property. But the thing is that we probably, instead of getting like a $300,000 home at $300,000, there's ways, and I've shown this in other videos about, hey, you can get that $300,000 home for $200,000 just as long as it's distressed, and then maybe you put some repairs in. But the thing is that even though you have upfront wealth in front by getting all that equity, you're not going to be able to cash flow as much as you think, right? Even at a $100,000 discount. So I don't know about you, but if you get a $200,000, let's say, rental property loan, and let's just do this, we'll just make it up here. We get an investment mortgage. Again, this is at a $100,000 discount. We'll just say 200K. And I don't know if you know what the statistics are about rental property mortgages, okay? But they're usually much higher because there's a lot more risk with the rental property mortgage than a personal home mortgage, right? So now let's go ahead and calculate. We'll create a copy of this, right? So the original balance is 200,000, and then it's 8%, and we're at, all right. So we're still at 200,000, and let's say at this point we get a rental property. Now, my number one rule with rental properties is that you want to get to a point, okay, where if you do have a rental property, and actually let me just copy this right here, where if you do get into a rental property, right, what happens if the tenant doesn't pay? Like, are you going to be okay? And it looks like from here, let me just add this up, C8 to C20. If the tenant doesn't pay, we're going to at least have something left over, right? That's really the most important thing, is that we're not, in we're being landlords from a position of strength rather than a position of weakness. So a lot of people, when the lockdowns happened in the early 2020s, a lot of tenants didn't pay. They're like, I don't got to pay this. Government says I don't have to, right? Sometimes when the government says you don't have to, when you really do, or the politicians do in front of TV, there are times where they lie to you, and then people think I don't want to pay the rent. But again, even if they do, you got to evict them and do all that, and so that might cost a lot of money. So my point is that you want to do rental real estate without depending too much on the tenant's money, because it's going to be from a position of strength. And as you can see here, even if the tenant does not pay, right, the tenant doesn't pay, we'll be okay because we're positive, right? So now let's go ahead and do this. So let's say we have this $200,000 mortgage. Let's just attack this in small bite-sized chunks. They call it chunking. So let's say we move 10K of that invest mortgage into that line of credit, right? How does that look like? Well, it kind of just looks something like this. So we have our cash flow right here. And this isn't actually our cash flow because we need to add the tenant's income, right? So let's go ahead and go here, and we'll say that it's $2,000 of income, but we don't get all of it because 30% goes to expenses like insurance, maintenance, taxes, right? So we don't get all of it. Vacancy is blah, blah, blah. So we're going to add the tenant's income to our whole income base to drive down the cash flow for the, I'm sorry, to drive down the debt for the rental property, because I don't know if you knew this or not. So let me just kind of go here to the internets. Where are we? Okay. So I don't know if you knew this or not, but if you take a look at how much you pay to the bank for getting a $200,000 loan at 8%, the cost of a loan is $431,000, folks, and you pay $231,000 in interest. So you pay more in interest than you do in the loan. And assuming that everything went right and we had a good $200 a month cash flow, the bank would make $231,000. Oh, actually, this should be 8%. The bank would make $328,000, and you would only make about 72 grand with that pitiful $200 a month cash flow, right? So most of the tenant's money did not go to you, went to the bank. Isn't that pathetic? Right? That's really kind of sad. But again, let's reverse the situation, right? We don't want to do what most landlords do with the $200 of good cash flow, right? That's a no bueno. So let's go back here. And so again, we're going to use all of our income to generate that massive stacks of cash flow, right? Massive fat stacks of cash flow. So it'd be my money and the tenant's money into the line of credit, expenses out, and our balance is going to go down by $4,633.82. Okay, so how would that work? Well, we just add $10,000. Was it $10,000? Let me just go back here. We went from 200 to 190. So let's just go to here and add $10,000. Okay, $10,000. So this is where we paid off that I'm sorry, where we quote chunked $10,000 into a line of credit. So we technically paid off that line of credit here and then added $10,000. And what we're going to do is with our cash flow, let's see how long it takes us to pay it off. And what's our cash flow right now? It's 4.6, so a little bit less because that rental property mortgage is high, 633.82. But again, we get other benefits from that rental real estate like depreciation, principal pay down, blah 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 blah. But as you can see, it took us 2 months to pay it off, right? $10,000. Now, if we take a look at the mortgage amortization schedule, which is right here, right? And I go to schedule right here. How long does it take to pay off $10,000? We did it in 2 months, but you can see right here, it takes us about 6 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About at least 5 years. And we did it in 2 months, right? And now here's the cool thing. We have something called a velocity banking calculator that can kind of help determine our debt payoff, right? How long does it take us to pay off this $200,000 of debt using all of our entire cash flow and the tenant's income and all that. And again, we're going to generate the fat stacks of cash flow, right? Fat stacks, not the $200 stacks. F that. I want the fat stacks of cash flow. And we're going to kind of determine, with the help of our velocity banking calculator, right, how long is it going to take? And so all we got to do here, okay, is put in this velocity banking calculator. Again, where did I get this? Provided by Renatus, where I originally first learned velocity banking from. In full disclosure, I make commission off selling their products, which is one of the reasons why I promote them. But this is where I originally learned velocity banking from in 2017. Okay, and all we gotta do is really cool. Just put in that information: $200,000 loan, $200,000 balance, 8% for 30 years. And what is that monthly payment? Let me just check. It's 1467.53. So 1467.53. Okay. And then 10% in line of credit. What is our income? We got a huge income. We got our income, which was already high, and the tenant's income, even though originally we're broke. So it'll be 10,400, right? And then our living expenses, everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So again, I'm looking at my other screen right here, but let me go ahead and sum it up. But it's our general expenses plus our personal mortgage. And if I sum it up here on my other screen, which you can't see, it's 4298.65. So let me just type in 4298.65, right? And then now what we do is we select a chunk amount, right? So we could just do like something like $12,000. It should be an amount that's very similar to your paycheck. You don't have to make it too big. But just realize the higher you go, the more that you pay, because again, this is a higher interest line of credit, and the whole point of the line of credit at this stage is to prevent something called segregation of income and make it easier for you to overpay by dumping all your income into the line of credit, right? So let me just kind of go in here, and bam, 3.1 years, right? So 3.1 years, we're completely good. We cash flow, and for 27 years, instead of experiencing that itty bitty $200 of cash flow, we're gonna get basically 1,400 times whatever, 30 times 12. We're gonna and not actually 30 years, just 27 years, because we're being patient and not taking out any money and taking that $200 of cash flow. We're not going to do that. But take a look at this, right? So if you did it the way that the bank wanted you to, you would pay $320,000, or at least a tenant would have, right? But because you did it the velocity banking way, you only paid 26 grand and you paid it off in 3.1 years, right? And again, if you want to just do it again, get another rental house. Get another rental house. You just keep doing it again. So what you do is you get another rental house, $100,000 discount, and you get a $2,000 a month tenant paying it. So it's 2,000 times zero point 0.7. You rinse and repeat the process, and then bam, the next house gets paid off in about 2.5 years, right? And then we just do it again. Oh my goodness, we got so much cash flow, fat stacks of cash flow. We got another rental house, and then the next rental house takes us 2.1 years. So now you got 4 or 5 rental houses, each one paid off in the period of 2 to 4 years, um, right? Like, and let's say your tenant doesn't pay. Okay, if your tenant doesn't pay, then that's okay because we're not in a desperate situation. But I probably gotta need to do a comparison, because even if the 10 doesn't pay, I've shown other videos where it's like it'll just take about 7 to 10 years, right? And that's way faster than the average American who takes 50 something years to pay off their 30-year mortgage, which to me is insane, right? Right, but that's the reality with real estate in America, because people borrow all this money and people don't realize that debt is a real killer of cash flow. And if we learn how to eliminate the debt, not learn to take money from it or from our rental property, that $200 of cash flow, but just dump all of our money into it, man, we could just generate fat stacks of cash flow. It's all good. It's all good. And this is my strategy right now. And I don't know if you knew this or not about me, but I paid off my mortgage under 3 years, kind of using this strategy, right? Well, I don't want to say kinda, because I don't want to say, hey, this is exactly what I did, because I'm a little bit vague. But I've been doing velocity banking for a couple of years, And what I do is I just dump my entire pay into the line of credit. That's where it all goes, into the line of credit. Now, who doesn't want a rental property paid off under 3 years, right? So what's going to happen is now that I have my personal home paid off under 3 years, I'm going to have my rental property paid off probably about 2.5 or 2, right? So within a span of 10 years, you could probably get 4 or 5 houses and then completely retire. And it's truly going to be passive just as long as you get the right tenant, right? Right tenant, generate massive stacks of cash flow, and let's live life, okay? All right, well, that's it for today. So just me rambling on and on about this thing called velocity banking. So hopefully you learn something new and you learn how about the possibilities. I can't say for sure that you can do it. Again, we always have to make those disclaimers, but learn about the possibilities of generating fat stacks of cash flow, right? Okay, well, that's it for today. This is Korean Atlanta Mentorship. Have a great day, and we'll speak next time.